Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Senate Bill 221 is a reintroduction of SB 89 from last year. SB 221 will better protect victims of stalking by amending state penal code to conform to the federal stalking statute by including threats to a victim's pet as a component of threatening behavior that could be used to establish a pattern of conduct. The crime of stalking is composed of a pattern of conduct that places victims in fear for their safety or the safety of their family members or pets. The standard of proof to convict a stalker is very high, the highest of the standards in the law, meaning there must be proof beyond a reasonable doubt of a pattern of stalking behavior to convict a perpetrator. Unfortunately, stalking victims are unprotected by state law when it comes to threats against their pets. If a stalker threatens a victim's pet to instill fear in and control their victim, this behavior cannot currently be used to establish a pattern of stalking. Pet owners consider their animals to be a member of their family or to be a necessary part of their lives if we're talking about service animals, and stalkers should not be able to use threats against the animal as a means to harass, manipulate, or terrorize their victim. Threats to family members are already covered under state law. SB 221 would simply update California's anti-stalking law by adding threats to pets to the list of behaviors used to establish a pattern of stalking. Joining me in support of this bill is sponsor Nicholas Sackett with the Social Compassion in Legislation and Managing Deputy District Attorney Nick Peterson from the Riverside County District Attorney's Office.
Great, good morning. Oh, it's not on.
There we go. Good morning, sir. Good morning, committee. Thank you for your time. My name is Nicholas Peterson. I'm a Managing Deputy District Attorney from Riverside County, and I'm not here to tell you that stalking is wrong, dangerous, or criminal. We all know that. What I do want to talk about briefly is the fact that the current law is leaving unprotected a critical area of vulnerability. You see, stalking is a crime at its heart about control. The stalker inappropriately fixates on a target of obsession driven by this imagined love, this future that they foresee together. But when the stalker realizes that that's not going to happen, they enter what's called the devaluation stage, which is incredibly dangerous, where they seek to punish and isolate the victim. Their mentality is that if I can't have you, no one can. And the goal of the stalker in this stage is to rob the victim of any comfort or any love that comes from anybody else. So who do we turn to in those times of need for unconditional love? Who's always happy to see us? And first thing in the morning, at the end of the day, a short trip to Sacramento. Our beloved animal companions, right? Our pets. And for this reason, stalkers often target the pets of their victim because that's where they can inflict the most pain. So I offer you the example of Brianna, 18-year-old from my county, whose stalker threatened to take her beloved kitten Wally and quote-unquote skin him alive. Under the current law, that statement that he would skin her cat alive was not protected, was not considered stalking, because the law didn't recognize Wally as an immediate family member. If the law had recognized that, law enforcement could have intervened, and the story could have ended differently, but it didn't, because of the distinction between pets and family members. But that distinction meant nothing to her stalker, who a few days later took her kitten and used him as blackmail to lure her to a field where she found the kitten dead. Sadly, Brianna is far from alone in her experience, and under the current law, we have to wait until the animal's taken or killed to consider that conduct criminal. Even then, it's defined as theft or animal cruelty, but we have to call it what it is. It's stalking. And let's not wait until a pet is taken or killed to make that recognition. In cases like Brianna's, we're missing a golden opportunity to intervene before a tragedy occurs. All it takes to change that is the recognition that animals are family. So please, consider the proposed legislation. Please give protection to the most innocent and vulnerable members of our community. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
There we go. Good morning, Chair, members. My name is Nicholas Sackett, Director at Social Compassion in Legislation, an animal rights advocacy nonprofit founded in 2007 and proud sponsor of SB 221. The reason that we and other animal rights organizations support this bill is because we are acutely aware of the bond that our supporters have with their animals. We see every day the lengths that Californians will go to save their pets from harm. This bill isn't about protecting those animals from harm, although in practice we know that it will do so. This bill is about protecting people from being terrorized by their stalker using the human-animal bond as a point of vulnerability. A 2024 Pew Research poll showed that 97% of Americans consider their pet family, with 57% of women and 64% of lower income demographics considering their animal to be as equal to a human family member. This bill recognizes the reality of those figures. If your loved one came to you and said they had an ex who was committing all the components of the stalking crime, willfully, maliciously, and repeatedly following or harassing them, and making a credible threat with the intent to place your loved one in fear for the safety of their animals, would you want to tell them that unfortunately that kind of behavior is not against the law? That there's nothing the law can do for them until some future animal abuse is carried out? To me, our supporters, that behavior should be criminal. Thank you for listening. Appreciate your consideration and urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we go to any other witnesses in support, we do have a quorum, so I'd like to ask the committee assistant to call the roll.
Araguin?
Here.
Araguin here. Sayarto?
Here.
Sayarto here. Caballero? Caballero here. Gonzalez? Gonzalez here. Perez? Weiner?
And ask that the other members, we are meeting in room 2200 and 1021 O Street. As soon as you are able, please join us so we can record your vote respectfully on the bills. So are there any other witnesses in support of SB 221? Please come forward to the microphone and state your name, affiliation, and position for the record.
Chiefs Association in support.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair members. Usha Muchler on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association in support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members. Karen Stout on behalf of the Animal Legal Defense Fund. We're in strong support. Thank you.
Good morning, David Boyd for the California District Attorneys Association in support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Lieutenant Julio De Leon from the Riverside Sheriff's Office in support.
Any other witnesses in support of SB 221? Okay. We'll now take any principal witnesses in opposition to SB 221. If you can please come forward.
All right. Chair and members, my name is Aubrey Rodriguez, and I am a legislative advocate at ACLU California Action. Our organization is in opposition to SB 221, which would greatly expand the definition of stalking, a crime that carries with it a punishment between 1 and 5 years in prison. The ACLU is concerned that broadening this language could lead to the overcriminalization of actions that, while insensitive or unwelcome, do not rise to the level of true stalking and warrant imprisonment. Criminalizing behavior that is insensitive is not only impractical but dangerous. Overcriminalization exacerbates existing racial and economic disparities in the justice system, while also disproportionately affecting individuals who are low income and unable to afford legal representation or pay fines. This expansion of criminal activity can ensnare individuals in the criminal justice system for relatively minor infractions, leading to long-term consequences such as loss of employment, housing, and civil liberties. As advocates for community members who do not have the privilege of addressing policymakers directly, we ask you to be mindful of these impacts when considering legislation that seeks to expand criminal penalties for nonviolent offenses. Lastly, it is important to note that existing law already provides protections to animals under the animal cruelty laws at the state and federal level. And as noted in the analysis that was provided to everyone, a prosecutor can already argue that any person who would reasonably fear for their own safety if the perpetrator was threatening a person's pet, in addition to committing other harassing or threatening behavior against that person, which ultimately makes this bill unnecessary. For these reasons, we urge your no vote on SB 221. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other principal witnesses in opposition to SB 221?
Good morning, Smealy Rogers, Ella Baker Center for Human Rights in opposition.
Any other witnesses in opposition to SB 221?
Danica Rodon on behalf of Initiate Justice and the LA Public Defenders Union, Local 148, in respectful opposition.
Any other witnesses in opposition to SB 221? Okay, thank you. I'll bring it back to the committee for questions and comments before we go back to the author. Any questions or comments? I just want to say, Senator Sierra, yes.
Thank you very much. So, I kind of look at this as if you're going to threaten somebody's pet, there's something wrong with you already. If you're stalking somebody, you know you're being stalked. And if you take it to another level and it's threatening a pet or doing something to that pet, and you're only if you're the victim of that, in other words, you're the pet owner, your only recourse is to watch them get charged with animal cruelty instead of the stalking that person so well deserves. I don't agree with that. There's no thing in high school occupation stalking and pet killing. So maybe we ought to take that seriously when people are doing that. And also pet killing is related to going into being serial killers later. So maybe we're taking a serial killer out of the public. And so, I think your bill is a good bill. It's not about the pet, even though for me it would be. But it's about the progression of a serious threat to a human being with stalkers, because sometimes those stalkers turn into murderers. And I think intervening at an earlier stage is probably a good idea. So I'll be supporting your bill.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Senator Caballero?
So, the bottom line is we're talking about stalking here. And so the challenge, I'm going to support your bill today, but to me, when I look at the way that the law is set up, it's continued and repeated behavior, threats, and actions that lead a person to feel unsafe. And if we have to wait until someone actually injures or kills an animal, then we've not done enough. And that all we're saying is that if the behavior is repeated, threatening behavior, and it includes the animal of an individual, that it should be included as part of the stalking statute. So I don't see this. This is really a fairly minimal kind of expansion, and I think it's really true that if someone is likely in their stalking behavior to include an animal in it, there's an increased threat, because you're not always with your animal, and people really do love their animals like they're part of the family. It's intended by a stalker to be the family member that they know that the person loves and wants to protect. So I'm going to support your bill today. I think it's a fairly narrow addition to the bill, and I appreciate you bringing it forward. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Following up on Senator Caballero's comments, you have to maim, mutilate, torture, or wound or kill an animal for that to meet the standard of animal cruelty, and that is a very high bar, and that does not provide protection for people who are intending to threaten people's pets as a way to intimidate or harass an individual. So I think this provides added protections for Californians as well as their pets, and I will be voting for your bill today. And just note that this is a reintroduction of a bill, SB 89, that was introduced and passed out of this committee last year. I think for the same reasons, I will be voting for your bill today. So I'll turn it back over to you, Senator Ochoa-Bogh, to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So once again, the crime of stalking is composed of a pattern of conduct that places the victims in fear for their safety and the safety of their family members or pets. And the standard of proof to convict a stalker is very, very high in California. The highest of standards of all in the law, meaning that there must be proof beyond a reasonable doubt of the pattern of stalker behavior to convict a perpetrator. Current law ignores how powerful a threat to a beloved pet can be. Not updating state statute leaves the victims vulnerable and gives stalkers a method of perpetrating fear in their victims without consequence. California's anti-stalking law must be updated to cut off this loophole for stalkers and better protect the victims. I thank the committee for their support and their witnesses for being here today, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Moved by Senator Ciarto.
SB 221, Ochoa-Bogh. Motion is to pass to appropriations. Araguin?
Aye.
Araguin, aye. Ciarto?
Aye.
Ciarto, aye. Caballero? Caballero, aye. Gonzalez? Gonzalez, aye. Perez? Weiner.
Okay, we'll keep that bill on call. Thank you very much, Senator Ochoa-Bogh. Before we go to Senator Jones, who I see here, since we do have a quorum, I'll entertain a motion on the consent calendar, which consists of SB 459 Grayson, SB 552 Cortese, and SB 553 Cortese, unless a member would like to pull an item for further discussion.
Move the bills.
Motion on the consent calendar by Ciarto. Let's call the roll.
Araguin?
Aye.
Araguin, aye. Ciarto?
Aye.
Ciarto, aye. Caballero? Caballero, aye. Gonzalez? Gonzalez, aye. Perez? Weiner.
Okay, we'll keep that motion on call. Let's go to SB 93 as amended. I'll entertain a motion.